Shavua Tov, coming to you Motzei Shabbat, November 1st, 2025. Angela Buchdahl ran back from her book tour, but she has now responded over her lack of condemnation for Zohran Mamdani. I want to set the stage here that she has signed multiple letters before, political letters, including appeals to the Biden administration for ceasefires and things like that. So she's done political things. She also was instrumental in leading a charge of rabbis in America protesting Prime Minister Netanyahu and speaking out against Prime Minister Netanyahu. Just want to put that out there as the preface before we now go into this speech. This is the first time I'm listening to it. Literally ran here after Shabbat. Let's see what we got.
As a rabbi, I'm accustomed to family emergencies necessitating a change in plans. And even though I'm on sabbatical, I knew I needed to be here with my Jewish family. High emotions over our upcoming mayoral elections have roiled our community. I sent you a letter reaffirming my condemnation of anti-Zionist and anti-Semitic rhetoric, my steadfast support of Israel and Zionism, and explaining why I
just want to be clear here that it's her steadfast support for promoting the ideas that she wants to see in Israel. That's very different than steadfast support for Israel.
No longer sign public letters, and why.
And now, after protesting Netanyahu less than 2.5 years ago and signing petitions about military strategy, she now doesn't sign public letters when there is a huge anti-Semite potentially becoming the next mayor of New York City. And her friend, Elliot Cosgrove, the rabbi at Park Avenue Synagogue, led the charge and actually spoke out against Zohran Mamdani. Too late, Rabbi, but he did do it.
I do not endorse specific candidates. Some of you agreed with my position. Some of you very emphatically did not. I was flooded with emails of support, and I want to thank all of you who shared those words with me. But I want to offer even more thanks to those of you who privately and respectfully shared your disagreement with me. I have been listening, and I want to respond in person tonight because that is what you do when you care about your family. We arrived this week at Parshat Lech Lecha, the beginning of the Jewish story. God calls Abraham and Sarah to leave their home and comfort for a place they do not know, promising, "You shall be a blessing." But before we think of the grandeur of that destiny, imagine the uncertainty, the feeling of being strangers in unknown territory. Many of you have shared that this is how you feel right now, that this is an existential moment for our Jewish community. Some fear that in the most Jewish city in the world, we are becoming strangers once again. I share many of those fears. I fear living in a city and a nation where anti-Zionist rhetoric is normalized and contagious.
First of all, she's talking about a city and a nation. Notice that she's now zooming out. Nobody asked her to zoom out. We're talking specifically about this mayoral election.
Israel is singularly and repeatedly called out and demonized as the worst actor on the world stage, where our children feel ashamed to call themselves Zionists.
She literally warned that support for Israel in America may completely erode because of Israel's actions, whether that was judicial reform or what was going on through the war in Gaza. So just keep that in mind as she's speaking.
Or afraid to wear Jewish symbols, or worry they can only belong if they are the good kind of Jew. I'm terrified by how anti-Zionist rhetoric and anti-Semitic tropes have led to some deadly violence against Jews. Mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani has contributed to a mainstreaming of some of the most abhorrent anti-Semitism. His shocking 2023 accusation, when the boot of the NYPD is on your neck, it's been laced by the IDF.
That's great. I mean, thank you for saying this, Angela Buchdahl. That's tremendous. Okay, so just calling a spade here, this little bit right here, great job. But why wasn't this called out 2 months ago? I mean, he literally started Students for Justice in Palestine at Bowdoin University, or Bowdoin College, sorry. So this is not new. He's been doing this for a decade.
This crosses the line clearly into anti-Semitism, not only demonizing Israelis, but echoing the age-old anti-Semitic trope that Jews across the world are the root cause of our problem here. His false claims of genocide, his reluctance to label Hamas a terrorist organization, his unwillingness to condemn phrases like globalize the Intifada and absolute opposition to Israel as a Jewish state contributes to an atmosphere of denigration and ostracization of Jewish people everywhere.
Great job. Why wasn't this said when he won the primary, the Democratic primary? Why wasn't this said then? But great job right here.
In addition to dangerous rhetoric, his pledge to shut down the NYPD's Strategic Response Group, which broke up the violent protests at Columbia, could mean that when Jews are under attack, we may not feel protected. It is hard not to fear that the environment we witnessed for our Jewish children on Columbia's campus after October 7th could be a preview of the way that New York City could start feeling for all Jews. For so many in this community, this is reason enough to determine your vote unequivocally. We must acknowledge that these hateful ideas did not begin with one candidate. They are part of a broader systemic forces in academia, politics, and social movements that have sought to delegitimize Jewish peoplehood and the existence of a Jewish state.
This has been going on for over 100 years. I'm not really sure why this is relevant right here, but let's see.
These narratives thrive in environments that favor moral oversimplification, where the world is divided neatly into oppressors and victims without understanding Jewish history or anti-Semitism. We are a people who holds moral nuance, that holds love and critique together. To love Israel is not to deny its flaws. To criticize Israel is not to deny our people's right to exist in safety and sovereignty.
That sounds good and is generally true. Nobody is saying that. That's it's a straw man of the far left progressive Democratic Party infiltration into the political conversation. Most people are not saying you can't discuss issues. For example, I have issues with how the judicial reform was handled. I live in America, and as such, I can have disagreements with it or discuss it and talk to Israeli counterparts. That does not mean that I would lead a protest outside of the UN like Angela Buchdahl was going to do in September of 2023 until she got COVID.
Anti-Semitism flourishes when the world loses its capacity for that complexity, and we must not lose it ourselves.
So now I'm just predicting here. Again, I haven't watched, but now she's saying if you see the world black and white, good and bad, you're able to clearly call out Zohran Mamdani. You are actually feeding anti-Semitism because you see things as black and white, which feeds anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. Let's see if this happens.
I also know for many Jews, equally committed to Jewish life, this feels like an existential moment for other reasons. I heard from Central congregants and had the opportunity to speak with students at 3 different Hillels just this week, and many, especially our younger generation, feel like strangers right now in their synagogues or in institutional Jewish life. They tell me they worry that the Jewish community is becoming too focused on fear and what can be done to us, as opposed to focusing on our own robust energy and our agency. They lament that Jews have made this mayoral election about a single issue when other issues are just as urgent and pressing for them. They praise Mamdani's efforts to meet with Jewish business leaders, civil leaders, and clergy to hear their concerns, and they point out that he has moderated some of his rhetoric and emphasized repeatedly that he will protect the Jewish community of New York, and taken more than a symbolic step in asking Police Commissioner Tisch to stay. I would not quickly trust a campaigning politician changing his lifelong positions.
Why can't she just say these people are naive and they're sophomores in college that came to her book tour? This idea that, oh, this college student says that, like she's saying, a campaigning politician seems to have changed his views. That's like a nuanced view. That's not a nuanced view. That's moronic.
But I hear those who believe that we must engage even with those we deeply disagree with, or risk isolating ourselves from the broader good of this city. In addition to the very real external threats highlighted in this election, I fear what has happened within our Jewish community, across the nation, and right here at Central. It endangers all of us.
Let's just run that back. I want to make sure I understand exactly what she said here.
We trust a campaigning politician changing his lifelong positions. But I hear those who believe that we must engage even with those we deeply disagree with.
I agree on that point. I have people that appear on Al Jazeera appear on my podcast. I had Peter Beinart appear on my podcast. I agree in engaging with people with whom you disagree. No disagreement here.
Or risk isolating ourselves from the broader good of this city. In addition to the very real external threats highlighted in this election, I fear what has happened within our Jewish community, across the nation, and right here at Central.
So now there's threats in the community when you have someone who is basically Students for Justice in Palestine, anti-Zionist, anti-Semitic, horrible person running to be the mayor of New York, and she didn't condemn him until just last night. And there's also a problem in Central here. Let's see what she has to say.
It endangers all of us. It's the way that we're trying to impose a litmus test on other Jews, essentially saying you're either with us or you're against us.
Yes, you either support someone who promotes anti-Semitic stereotypes or you don't. And when it comes to prayer or whether or not you're welcome to participate, that's a very different story. But if your political views are straight up insane, it's the job of moral leaders in the community, and she claims to be a moral leader, to stand up and say, this is absolutely over the line, don't do that. So yes, there is a litmus test. If someone wanted to go support Al-Qaeda and come to Central Synagogue, I would hope that Central Synagogue would impose a litmus test. If someone wanted to join the KKK and then maybe they're a progressive KKK member and they wanted to come, but they don't mind Jews. They only dislike black people, and they want to come and pray at Central Synagogue. I would hope that Central Synagogue would say that's a litmus test.
Pitting Jew against Jew, rabbi against rabbi.
She's literally agitating against the Israeli rabbinate. There's multiple times in the speeches, sermons, as you'd say, over the last decade and a half or so, that she does that repeatedly. So please come off it. That's just so disingenuous and a straight up a lie.
Too many in our community are no longer willing to sit at the same table with people.
Lies, by the way. Every single person I've reached out to that wanted to discuss this reached out to Angela Buchdahl privately, spoke to her privately in the last decade. I sent an email to her asking her to appear on this podcast. I didn't receive a response. There's plenty of people who have reached out. So that's also this concept that somehow the table is just disappeared and vanished and we can't discuss anything. Lie.
Even family members who disagree with them. Whoever becomes our next mayor, we will still have to fight the larger threats facing this Jewish community, and we cannot address them effectively if we are divided.
You need to have a baseline, right? So the fact that Central Synagogue had someone quoting Christian theology and Romans in the sermon on Rosh Hashanah 2020, I think that should be a fundamental line that the normative, even reform movement rejected for many, many years. that should not be welcome. And if you can't agree on that, then you have a very fundamental problem that goes well beyond Zohran Mamdani.
A great deal of the difference in these Jewish responses and the generational divides in our community could be explained by the Jewish memory that each of us holds most central. Yossi Klein Halevi from the Shalom Hartman Institute distinguishes between what he calls Passover Jews and Purim Jews, who prioritize two contrasting Jewish commands to remember. Now, Passover Jews are shaped by the Jewish command to remember we were slaves in Egypt, so we must look after those who are the most vulnerable. This Jewish memory teaches the need for empathy, bridge building, and justice for all peoples. Purim Jews are shaped by the Jewish...
I don't want to get too much into theology here, but that's also just not true. You also have a command to remember what Amalek did to you. That's tied into that. I will also say that Angela Buchdahl has previously used the command of Zachor, or remembrance, to say that this is a case for Palestinian nationalism, which is a complete inversion of Judaism.
Command to remember Amalek. Understand that in every generation there are enemies who rise to destroy us. So we must look after the Jewish people. This Jewish memory teaches the need for vigilance, courage, and self-protection. Both memories are sacred, and both are necessary. Compassion without caution is reckless naivete. Vigilance without empathy is paranoia or despair. We need both of these Jewish orientations to inform how we...
Who is promoting vigilance without empathy? There's an anti-Semitic candidate for mayor who promotes anti-Semitic ideas, and he should not be the mayor of New York City. Closed, shut.
Move through the world. There are both Purim and Passover Jews in this congregation. Your primary Jewish memory might pull you to vote differently from the person sitting next to you. To your left and your right are people who voted for Trump and Harris, who will vote for Cuomo and Mamdani, maybe even Sliwa. My commitment is to keep all of you in this sacred community, because Judaism is not an echo chamber.
Nobody said that Judaism is an echo chamber. I haven't heard anyone from Central Synagogue congregants promoting that there has to be an echo chamber. Not one. I haven't heard that. I've heard an echo chamber of progressive leftist ideas coming out of the clergy from Central Synagogue, who, by the way, donated as a clergy to stop the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. That's something they said and promoted on their social media.
I will continue to speak carefully and thoughtfully about moral issues that unfold in the political realm. I thanked President Biden for standing with Israel after October 7th, and I thanked President Trump for helping bring home the hostages after others failed. I've been an outspoken advocate for Israel, even as...
If anybody's watching this and can tell me where she said that about Trump, I would love to see that. I didn't find it in a sermon off the bat. I didn't see the word Trump in any of the sermons, but if anybody has that, please send it to me.
I have criticized its government when it veers toward extremism or forgets the dignity of others.
In her opinion, the dignity of others, extremism. Excuse me, the Israeli people elected that government, and that government made decisions, like it or not. Who are you, with your progressive values in Manhattan, lecturing the Israeli people and the Israeli government? The arrogance, the sheer arrogance is just insufferable.
I will not remain silent when politicians ignore our tradition's command not to oppress the stranger, whether that stranger is a refugee, a transgender teen, or someone depending on food stamps for their next meal. None of this requires endorsing a candidate.
She could have just condemned Zohran Mamdani. Why didn't she do that?
In this way, I can speak about issues from my rabbinic perspective while respecting you to vote your own conscience. It's not hard to foresee the dangers of political endorsements. Once a rabbi can tell you how to vote, imagine donations being given or withheld in exchange for a rabbi's thumb on the scale.
That already exists. Who are we kidding? Let's take the extremes, right? If she says that Benjamin Netanyahu is essentially an extremist, horrible person, whether you agree with her or not, right? But Donald Trump said that Benjamin Netanyahu is basically the greatest Jew of all time, right? Remember that whole thing where he asked Isaac Herzog to pardon him? What is the implication of her speaking out against Netanyahu in such a way? You're basically saying the president is in bed with extremists and crazy people. And when you promote the transgender ideology from the Bima, and you know how the conservatives think about it and how the progressive Democrats think about it, you are endorsing candidates in that way. So this is a load of hogwash.
Or imagine how politicians could start trading political favors for the votes of a community.
She lit the menorah at the Obama White House and the Biden White House. There's clearly involvement between people that are very much involved in Democratic policies and the Democratic Party and Angela Buchdahl's congregants.
The Johnson Amendment and Central's policy of non-endorsement is a principled stand, which is important for the health of our country, our faith, and this congregation. This distinction is important. We can advocate on political issues, but we will not endorse or specifically denounce candidates.
So let's say, for example, that you had a candidate that said that they want to ban transitions in the transgender community completely, that it's unethical, immoral. You're telling me that with her inclusive stance, she wouldn't denounce that position. Is that really the standard? So there's no possible policy position that she would ever condemn? I don't believe it.
Similarly, I no longer sign public letters, even those whose sentiments I share. Too often such letters are weaponized by politicians or the media. My words should come from this pulpit or directly to you. That is how I best serve you, with my own voice.
Or on her book tour.
This has been a painful week. The Jewish community faces real threats, and we need to confront them without turning on one another. The sages remind us that both temples were destroyed because of sinat chinam, internal strife, senseless hate.
The key word being senseless. And this isn't hatred toward people. This is hatred towards a non-Jewish anti-Semite who wants to be the mayor of New York. Please take the sinas chinam garbage argument and shove it. I'm sorry. It's so infuriating, the abuse of the Jewish tradition to justify cowardice.
We can argue robustly, and we should, as our sages did, but disputation does not require defamation. At the end of the day, this divide...
Who has defamed anybody? Most of the arguments I've seen of just quoting the people. That's not what defamation is. You can't defame someone by quoting them.
And hurts us all. That would be the true danger, a fracture in our Jewish family, including this one. We are carrying real fears. We are facing real threats, and because of that, I want to share and end with some hope. From the young people that I got to meet this week who lifted my spirits. At Yale's Jewish Asian Shabbat, more than 450 students gathered for prayer, song, and yes, kosher egg rolls. What a surprise they invited me to headline that. These, at Brandeis, Dozens of young Reform leaders told me that they study and sing and serve together every week, and I got to join them for Havdalah and song session and a beautiful conversation. At Harvard, one student reflected that part of Chabad's appeal is its simplicity because he was craving belonging more than ideology. These students are our future. They are our Jewish future. They are grounded, joyful, and searching for meaning. They don't want to be defined by fear, even as they recognize danger. They want a Jewish community where
nobody is defined by fear. The Jewish people are defined fundamentally on the connection to God. This has nothing to do with being defined by fear. All that anybody asked Angela Buchdahl to do was to join a public denunciation of Zohran Mamdani, which she failed to do.
Where disagreement doesn't mean disconnection, where we can teach them both commands to remember that we were the stranger and that we must remain vigilant against real threats. Like Abraham and Sarah, many of us feel we've entered uncertainty. We are walking through the wilderness again. But we've walked this path before, and we will find our...
Is there a history of someone promoting outright anti-Semitism as the potential Democratic mayor of New York? Maybe I'm just missing this. I have not seen that history before, but tell me if I'm wrong.
Our way forward if we walk it together. We will honor both our vigilance and our empathy, both our particularism and our universalism. We will listen, even when it's hard. And in doing so, I am confident we will fulfill God's promise, and we will be a blessing.
That's a complete load of garbage, that ending there. I have no idea what that means. Pretty nice word salad. I'm very nervous. I'm actually more nervous that people listen to sermons at Central Synagogue than I am about Zohran Mamdani being the candidate for mayor for New York. It's a much more high-level threat in the sense that there are anti-Jewish ideas being promoted in the name of Judaism, and some people just don't know any better. That's a real threat. I'm nervous about that. And let's remember, at the beginning, there was a public letter. You're looking for moral leaders to take a stand and actually condemn Zohran Mamdani. Angela Buchdahl did not meet that standard. She's now come back with a bunch of word salad saying things she should have said months ago. You have to ask yourselves why. And when it comes to, oh, well, this is just because you don't agree theologically with this person. Not at all. I'll go back to the Elliot Cosgrove example. Elliot Cosgrove had Cardinal Timothy Dolan, Duchin, recite the priestly blessing with him, or a version of it, from the bima at Park Avenue Synagogue on Yom Kippur. I think that's completely wrong. I completely disagree. I think it's beyond distasteful, but that's not for now. Rabbi Cosgrove stood up in front of his congregation and denounced Zohran Mamdani. And I applaud him for that. This has nothing to do with being in perfect lockstep for theological agreement or disagreement. That is a fake argument that they'll teach you at one of these pluralistic brainwashing institutions, which I graduated from. So do not give in to the lies and hatred of the ultra-progressive left. It's just not intellectually true. There are plenty of people who disagree, from far left to far right, whatever it might be, that can agree that Zohran Mamdani is an anti-Semite and should not be the next mayor of New York. That's the only standard. And Angela Buchdahl failed to meet that standard.